In 1785, a philosopher designed what he called the perfect prison, not because of its walls, not because of its locks, because of a single design principle. Every prisoner would be visible to a single unseen guard at any moment. The prisoners would never know when they were being watched, so they would have to assume they always were. They would stop needing guards. They would police themselves. He called it the Panopticon. Right now, your phone knows where you are. It knows what you've been reading, who you've been talking to, how long you slept, how fast your heart was beating at 2 a.m. If you have a fitness tracker, it knows when you were sedentary for too long. If you've been paying close enough attention, it's already predicting what you'll do next. This isn't speculation. This is the product. In 2024, scientists put people in a room and told them they might be observed. Then they scanned their brains. Being watched didn't just make people anxious. It changed how their brains processed information below the threshold of conscious awareness. Before any thought, before any choice, their brains had already begun scanning every face in the room for signs of judgment, faster, more urgently, before they were aware of doing it at all. The observation was already inside them. Her name is Nora, 42, project manager, Toronto. She runs every morning, not because she loves it, because yesterday, the watch told her she was 1,200 steps behind her weekly goal. She has never missed a weekly goal. She doesn't think of herself as being watched. She thinks of herself as disciplined. That distinction is going to matter. Jeremy Bentham's Panopticon was never fully built, but his idea was, the key wasn't the watching, it was the possibility of watching. Once you believe you might be observed at any moment, the external guard becomes unnecessary. You install one internally. You become your own warden. Nora has never been told not to use her phone at her desk. No rule exists. No one has ever said anything. And yet, when her manager passes the glass, she straightens. Not consciously, not as a decision, just as behavior. This is how surveillance works at scale. Not through enforcement, through architecture, through the knowledge, or even just the suspicion that visibility is possible. The guard doesn't need to be present. The design does the work.
Bentham's genius wasn't cruelty. It was efficiency. You don't need to watch everyone. You just need everyone to believe they might be watched. The prison builds itself. We call it Tuesday.
In December 2024, a team led by neuroscientist Kylie Seymour at the University of Technology, Sydney, ran a study. They told participants they might be observed. Then, they measured what happened in the brain, not during conscious decision-making, but below it. Using a technique that suppresses images from conscious awareness, they tracked how quickly the brain processed visual information before it reached the level of conscious awareness. Being watched changed the result, not by making people anxious in a way they could name, not by triggering a fear response that they could notice and correct for. It accelerated the brain's unconscious social scanning. Before a conscious thought formed, the observed brain was already reading faces faster, already processing signals of social judgment more urgently, already tuned, below awareness, to a single overriding question: how am I being seen? This is not paranoia. This is not a personality trait you can work on. This is what observation does to the human brain, physiologically, before you've chosen to let it. Nora spent the hour after her meeting replaying it. Not what she said, how she looked while saying it. The observation doesn't end when the room empties. It moves inside. Research published in 2025 found that the mental faculties most compromised by surveillance are precisely the ones we depend on most: attention, working memory, and the capacity to concentrate on what we're actually doing. The observation taxes the very instrument it's observing. Researchers studying online behavior documented what they call the chilling effect. When people know, or even suspect, they're being monitored, they explore fewer controversial topics. They express fewer dissenting opinions. They conform more tightly to perceived norms, not because someone told them to, because the possibility of observation is sufficient. After Edward Snowden's 2013 revelations about government surveillance programs, Google searches for terms associated with government watch lists dropped measurably. People didn't receive new information about surveillance. They received new awareness of the surveillance they had always been under. And they changed, silently, voluntarily, without being asked. The Panopticon doesn't issue instructions. It just needs to be visible enough that you issue them to yourself.
At some point, most of us stopped running because we love it. We started running because the watch says we should. We stopped eating what we wanted. We started eating what the app will approve. We outsourced the warden. And then we forgot we'd done it.
There is a form of surveillance that requires no external observer. Researchers studying everyday digital behavior identified 3 types of surveillance embedded in modern life. The surveillance of institutions watching you, the surveillance of peers watching each other, and self-surveillance, the tracking and documentation of your own behavior, voluntarily, habitually, until the metric becomes the experience. Research suggests that converting intrinsic experience into external data can degrade intrinsic motivation. You stop running because it feels good. You run because the number needs to move. The experience that is colonized by its own documentation. Studies on the act of photographing experiences found that documentation redirects cognitive resources away from the moment itself. You don't fully remember the meal. You remember the photo. The watcher you installed inside yourself is consuming the life it was supposed to track. Nora doesn't know she just did that. The edit was automatic. The thought she wanted to have, the skeptical one, the one that questioned the system, lasted 4 seconds. The thought she's allowed to have is already loading. She is not being monitored right now. She doesn't need to be. Sociologist Shoshana Zuboff named the end state of this system surveillance capitalism. The mechanism by which behavioral data harvested through observation is used not merely to watch you, but to predict you, and then to steer you. Bentham's Panopticon controlled behavior through the fear of being seen. The system you carry in your pocket controls behavior through something more precise than fear. It has your pattern. Your pattern doesn't need to be afraid. It just needs to be consistent. And it is. Nora's fitness data wasn't collected to help her run faster. It was collected to predict what she'd buy after the run. Nora hits her goal every week. She has not once asked herself why, not whether she wants to, not whether it's making her healthier, not whether the person who decided what healthy looks like is her. Over 70% of Americans report feeling they have little to no control over how companies collect and use their personal data. Clinicians are beginning to name a new psychological category: digital surveillance anxiety, a persistent, low-grade distress, not from a specific act of surveillance, but from the continuous ambient knowledge that observation is happening somewhere by systems you cannot see, cannot audit, and cannot leave without cost. It is not knowing you're being watched that does the most damage. It is the impossibility of knowing who is watching and what they're doing with what they see. Your brain rewards certainty the way it rewards food and survival. It defends what you believe not because you're right, but because being wrong feels neurologically like dying. That certainty made you predictable. Your anger was real, physiologically real, adrenaline, tunnel vision, the dopamine of righteous fury. And precisely because it was real, it was useful. To the algorithm, to the feed, to whoever needed you to stay on the screen. Your rage made you legible. And somewhere along the way, you began performing a version of yourself, consistently, publicly, for an audience that issued its verdict in real time through likes and silence and absence. The performed self became the only self the system could see. The performance made you a data set. This is where those 3 episodes end up. The certainty made you predictable. The rage made you legible. The performance made you a data set. And the data set made you a product. Not a target, not a victim, a product. Products don't get to ask questions.
Think about the last thought you didn't finish, the search you rewrote, the opinion you swallowed before it reached your mouth. You didn't need anyone to stop you. Who told you to?